Well, it's that time again where we look at the Premier League, but before we take a look at Game Week 14, I think we're going to do as we normally do. We're going to take a look at my Game Week 13 predictions, see how well I did, and see if I got any results correct. And spoiler alert, I didn't. But yeah, we're just going to jump into it with Manchester City versus Liverpool. So I predicted a 3-1 win for the Citizens, and it was actually just a 1-1 draw. And it looked to be business as usual as Holland put the hosts ahead 27 minutes in, and City almost doubled their lead before VAR ruled it out. Trent Alexander-Arnold scored a beautiful goal to rescue a point for the visitors, and also got this cold-ass pick as well. Fair play, man, fair play. And then we move on to Sheffield United versus Bournemouth. Now, I predicted a 2-1 win for Bournemouth, and there's actually a 3-1 win. It's 2 wins on the bounce for Bournemouth as they dominated the Blades at Bramall Lane. Tavernier opened the scoring for the Cherries with Cliver doubling their lead just before the break. 5 minutes into the second half, Tavernier grabbed his second, and that was really it, to be honest. The Blades did grab a consolation goal, but it was far too late to inspire any form of comeback. 2 wins on the bounce for Bournemouth, you know. What are they cooking over there? And then we move on to Nottingham Forest versus Brighton And Hove Albion. I predicted 3-1 to Forest. It's actually 3-2 to Brighton. Forest bottled another lead as Brighton came from behind to claim all 3 points. Forest opened the scoring just 3 minutes in through Elanga before Ferguson levelled things up with a brilliant volley. João Pedro then put the visitors ahead before half-time, before doubling their lead from the spot in the second half. Gibbs White did half the deficit from the spot after Dunk was sent off, but despite Forest's constant attempts to force an equaliser, they just could not find the back of the net. Very unfortunate. And then we move on to Burnley versus West Ham United. Now, I predicted 2-0 to West Ham. It was actually 2-1. West Ham came back from behind to take all 3 points back to London. Burnley went ahead from the spot through Rodriguez and stayed ahead until the dying embers of the match when the ball came off O'Shea to put the visitors level. Souček was there again at the death with the winning volley to secure all 3 points for West Ham. Souček, man, he loves a last minute goal. I swear that's all he does. And then we move on to Luton Town versus Crystal Palace, where I predicted a 1-1 draw. And it's actually a 2-1 win for Luton. Luton grabbed their first win at the Kenny as they beat Crystal Palace. The Hatters went ahead through Mengi late in the second half before Elise levelled things 2 minutes after. It was Jacob Brown who scored the winner not 10 minutes later, and the Hatters held on for a huge 3 points and their first 3 points at Kenilworth Road. Very impressive, I can't lie. And then we move on to Newcastle United versus Chelsea. I predicted 2-1 to Chelsea. It was actually 4-1 to Newcastle. Newcastle returned to winning ways with a brilliant win over Chelsea. Isak opened the scoring in the 13th minute before Sterling equalised about 10 minutes later. Lascelles then put them ahead on the hour mark before Joe Linton added another barely a minute after. Reece then saw red before Gordon added a fourth to truly seal it for Newcastle. I did not expect such a response from Newcastle. You've got to commend them, really. And then move on to Brentford versus Arsenal, where I predicted a 2-1 win for Arsenal. It's actually just a 1-0 win. Arsenal moved to the top of the league as they grabbed a huge 3 points against the Bees. Ramsdale was back in net for the Gunners, and he kept a massive clean sheet as Havertz struck late to claim those all-important 3 points. Very unfortunate for Brentford, but Arsenal were dominant throughout, so they deserve it, really. And then move on to the Sunday fixtures, and we start off with Tottenham versus Aston Villa. I predicted a 1-1 draw, but it was actually 2-1 to Villa. Spurs succumbed to their 3rd straight league defeat as Villa came from behind to take all 3 points back to Birmingham. Lo Celso opened the scoring for Spurs, but that wasn't enough as Torres levelled things just before the break. Watkins then scored the winner for Villa just after the hour mark. Spurs just couldn't find an equaliser, but Son scored 3 times, and each time it was ruled out for offside. So it wasn't that they were wasting chances, it was just they couldn't score. Villa do love trapping a team offside, though. They've had so many offside goals go for them this season, it's insane. And then we move on to Everton versus Manchester United, where I predicted a 1-0 win for Everton. It was a 3-0 win for Man United. And it was not to be for Everton, as Manchester United were just dominant throughout. It was United who opened the scoring through Garnacho with what has been dubbed the goal of the season, and to be fair, it was a phenomenal goal. Rashford then doubled their lead from the spot in the second half, with Martial even chipping in with a goal. The Toffees are still not rock bottom of the league though, but you've let Martial score, so you might as well be. And finally, the Monday fixture of Fulham versus Wolves. I predicted a 1-0 win for Wolves. It was actually a 3-2 win for Fulham. It was a 5-goal thriller at Craven Cottage with some absolutely mental VAR calls. Iwobi opened the string for the hosts, with Cunha drawing things level around 50 minutes later. Willian then put the hosts ahead from the spot before Hang once again drew things level, also from the spot. Willian though, he was there again from the spot to score the winner at the death to give Fulham all 3 points. But realistically, that penalty should not have been given. So, you know, VAR fucking up once again. But yeah, those have been my Game Week 13 predictions. As you can see, I didn't get any right. I don't know why I bother, man. I don't know why I bother. But we're going to put that behind us and move swiftly on to Game Week 14, where hopefully we can get a prediction correct. And I hope it's a Forest prediction. Please. So we're going to start off with the Saturday fixtures and Brentford versus Luton Town. Brentford host Luton at the Brentford Community Stadium as they look to return to winning ways and put an end to their 2 straight losses. Brentford have lost 2 of their last 5 matches and they haven't scored in either of those defeats either. They did almost hold Arsenal to a draw if it wasn't for that late Havertz goal, which was very unfortunate for the Bees because they did stand resolute, but they just couldn't break down Arsenal, man. Very unfortunate. Luton Town have also lost 2 of their last 5 matches, drawing 2 as well, as they're getting up to speed with the Premier League. They're not actually looking too bad in my opinion, especially compared to how many people had assumed they'd perform, myself included. Brentford will be favouring their chance to return to winning ways against Luton, giving Brentford currently find themselves in 11th, whereas Luton are sitting just 4 points clear of the relegation zone in 17th. With 5 points separating either side, this should be a good match. I'm going to say 3-1 to Brentford. I think Brentford will win this clash in the capital. Whilst things are looking up for Luton, Brentford are just a strong side and will looking to turn to winning ways sooner rather than later. Discounting their last 2 matches, Brentford have been clinical in front of net, scoring 19 goals this season. Luton though have not been as prolific, only scoring 12, but it's the best tally of the newly promoted sides, and for a team that's never actually played in the Premier League in its current form, that's pretty solid going, I think. Brentford have only conceded 18 to Luton's 23, so they're doing better there as well. I can't see Luton being able to keep Brentford locked down, but I do see the Hatters grab me a goal. Brentford should be back to winning ways though. And then we move on to Arsenal versus Wolverhampton Wanderers in what I'm calling the PGMOL derby. The Gunners host Wolves at the Emirates as they look to keep themselves at the top of the league. Arsenal will continue to challenge Man City for the Premier League title, and they found themselves at the summit after winning their last 2 matches, bringing their tally to 3 of the last 5, losing 1 and drawing the other. Wolves though find themselves in 12th, a whole 15 points behind their opponents, which is a pretty big gap, but from 12th to 1st, what would you expect? They've won 2 of the last 5 and drawn another, so it's not terrible form they're in. Wolves were shafted last week to be fair, so we'll be wanting to right the wrongs that they were dealt, but away in the capital, that's going to be a very tall order. I've been impressed with what I've seen from both sides, so it should be a good match, and I'm going to say 2-1 to Arsenal. I think that Arsenal will win this clash in London. Arsenal are pretty much cooking this season to be fair, and despite the slower start they had, they are once again in contention for the title. It'll be very interesting to see who's between the sticks for the hosts, as Raya will be eligible again and will have probably played in Europe, but Ramsdale played well against the Bees and held a clean sheet. But who are we kidding? It'll be Raya. It just seems like Arteta hates Ramsdale at the moment for some reason. It's looking like Wolves will still without Pedro Neto, which is definitely going to cost the West Midlanders. We saw against Fulham, they don't need him to make things happen, but he definitely helps. Arsenal have been very lethal in front of net, scoring 27 goals this season, which is much better than Wolves' 18 goals. But they've also conceded a lot less as well, only conceding 10 to Wolves' 23. Conceding 10 goals in 13 matches ain't bad going, I can't lie. Things are looking up for Arsenal, and I'm backing them to keep all 3 points in the capital. They just look too strong at the moment, and I don't think a side like Wolves is going to really trouble them at all, to be honest. Sorry, Wolves fans, but I don't think you've got that dog in you. I'm just saying how I see it, okay? Don't shoot the messenger. And then we move on to Burnley versus Sheffield United. It is a massive relegation 6-pointer as Burnley hosts fellow newly promoted side Sheffield United at Turf Moor. Now Burnley have not been having a good time of it this season. They currently find themselves rock bottom of the league on a measly 4 points, with a single win to their name. Sheffield United are in a similar situation, sitting on 5 points with just 1 win to their name as well. I feel like somehow both teams will lose this one. Neither side has shown much in the way of attacking threat, despite both teams having some good attacking quality at their disposal. They just can't get the best out of them, and that's shown in both sides' goal scoring this season, you know, both sitting bottom with 10 and 11 goals respectively. After 13 games, that's just not good enough, is it? They've also conceded the most this season too, Burnley conceding 32 and the Blades conceding 34 in 13 games. Absolute insanity. I'm going to say 2-1 to Burnley though. I am backing Burnley in this clash. This is the Clarets' best chance of getting 3 points on the board, at home to fellow strugglers Sheffield United. You should have this one in the bag, Both sides enjoyed dominant championship campaigns and remain largely equal on paper as well, further shown in the aforementioned goal scores and conceded. While the Blades have had slightly better fortunes of the two, I do feel that Turf Moor will be the deciding factor in this match. I don't think either manager is under threat that much yet, to be honest, despite league positions, but a result here will go a long way in showing that they are still capable and can compete in this league. Sheffield United are still suffering from quite a few injuries, so that will also hinder the Blades and blunt their attack, so I'm backing the Clarets here. Maybe it will finally lift them off the bottom of the league. But knowing Burnley, probably not. And then we move on to Nottingham Forest versus Everton. Forest host Everton at the City Ground in a match which could decide the future of Steve Cooper, as much as I don't want that. Forest have not been enjoying a great run of things recently. Ever since that brilliant win against Villa, Forest have failed to pick up any points and have dropped multiple leads in multiple matches. Well, 2 matches we've dropped like 4 leads. It's not looking good at all. Everton have been suffering as well though, being the victims of a 10-point deduction which has really hampered their hopes of Premier League survival, but have enjoyed much better form than Forest at the moment. I'm not going to lie, this is not a match I'm looking forward to. It always seems that when Forest are like the better side, when we've got things going for us, like against Brighton, we always seem to bottle it. We bottled it against Brighton, and I wouldn't be surprised if we bottled it here, as much as it pains me to say that. Forest have only won 1 of their last 5 matches, drawing another, whereas Everton have enjoyed the better form, winning 2 and drawing 1 as well. Everton have impressed me this season, in respect to what they were doing a couple of seasons ago. They've played well, and I think they would have comfortably escaped the relegation zones this season, but that points deduction really just shot them in the knees. I'm going to say 1-0 to Forest. I think Forest will run out victors in this clash. I mean, we need to. Both teams are fairly evenly matched despite the 9-point gap between the two. Forest have scored 16, whereas Everton has scored 14. But Everton do have the slightly better defensive record, only conceding 20 goals to Forest's 21, so it's slightly better. Everton will set up to frustrate, so I do see it being a very tough and very close affair in the East Midlands. It was the same last season. Sean Dyche is a Forest fan. He knows how to stop Forest, so I'm expecting a tough slog in this one. Neither team are suffering from that many injuries, but Forest will be without their current top scorer Awoniyi, which has blunted our attack. We look a lot less lethal going forward without him, so he's another huge miss. So yeah, as I said, I'm expecting a really tough clash at the City Ground, but it'll be rocking. We're going to be backing Cooper, and I can really see that dragging Forest over the line. I'm backing the 3 points to stay in the East Midlands, as well as Steve Cooper. And then we move on to Newcastle United versus Manchester United. Man United will travel up north to face Newcastle United at St James's Park. This is a Newcastle United side that is suffering from a lot of injuries at the moment. A huge chunk of their starters are out through injury, but even their bench or rotation players are also picking up injuries, which has really exposed the lack of depth this Newcastle have at their disposal. Man United are also suffering from their fair share of injuries at the moment, but their injuries seem to have much less impact on the squad, so I wouldn't really call them that important. Well, they've got a bunch of old men in the A&E room, so is it really a miss? Despite that, it does lessen Man United's depth, which, as we've seen, can be crucial. If you get run to a few injuries, then your season's over, pretty much. Man United have been enjoying some better form than Newcastle, grabbing 4 wins in their last 5, and find themselves a point ahead of their opponents as well. Newcastle have grabbed 3 points from their last 5, picking a big draw as well, and they've definitely been suffering from those absentees. But that's not stopped the Geordies scoring goals, currently being joint second highest scorers in this league, despite sitting in 7th. Newcastle scored 31 goals this season to Man United's 16. Just some quick maths for you, that's a 15 goal difference. Actually insane from a team in 7th place. Newcastle have also conceded less than United, conceding 14 to United's 16, so should make for an interesting clash. I'm going to say 3-1 to Newcastle. I'm backing Newcastle here at St James's Park. That's always been a big factor in Newcastle's results, and they always seem to do well when they're playing at home. The Geordies have won 6 of their last 7 home games this season, which is a very, very good record, and should make this an interesting clash. We've seen United go some tough places this season, and they've crumbled, so it's looking promising for the Geordies. As I mentioned, Newcastle have been prolific in front of net this season, scoring almost double the amount Manchester United have. Isak has been looking good since his return from injury and will no doubt cause Man United some issues at the back. Despite the scoreline I've predicted, it is going to be a tough game for either side, but I do think that Newcastle will win here. United have failed to beat Newcastle in their last 2 meetings since that Carabao Cup final. Eddie Howe sets up the Newcastle side well despite the injuries. You know, Lewis Miley's been looking very good. You've got Hall as well, who's looking solid. So, you know, despite the large amount of injuries Newcastle have, they've been performing well, and I can see that continuing against United. Manchester United, that is. I think the winner should just be able to go by United. You know, the United derby, let's call it. Okay, we move on to the Sunday fixtures, and we're going to start off with Chelsea versus Brighton and Hove Albion. Chelsea host Brighton at Stamford Bridge as both teams are suffering from a lot of injuries. Call this the A&E derby. Brighton put a stop to their slumping form with a resounding win over Forest, but even during that clash, they were not having a good time of it. It saw Lewis Dunk get a red and also saw a few of their players go off injured. Flippin' now, these guys are not having a good time right now. I can see why they celebrated like they did against Forest, my god. Chelsea also didn't have a good time of it, and also didn't win last week. Reece James saw a red. I mean, I swear this man is allergic to playing more than one game after another. Like, if he's not injured, he's suspended. What does this... does bro even play football? I'm not sure. Brighton have only won 1 of their last 5, but 3 of those were draws, so it's not the end of the world, and as the Seagulls find themselves in 8th. Chelsea have only picked up 1 win in their last 5 alongside 2 draws, and they're currently sitting in 10th, 6 points off their coastal opponents. Chelsea have scored 22 goals this season, but have scored less than Brighton, who've scored 28, which shows them continuing to be a prolific attacking side under De Zerbi. I'm going to say a 2-2 draw. I think we'll see the points shared in the capital. It will be a very close contest between the two sides. You know, despite the result, Chelsea played quite well against Newcastle, especially in the first half, and they've generally shown some bright performances this season, even if results have not really gone their way. Brighton themselves are battling an injury crisis at the moment, so won't have their strongest 11 available, but with De Zerbi roulette, do they ever have a strongest 11? I think the jury's out on that one. I'm expecting a good clash between these two sides. You know, neither shy away from a goal, and each side's defence hasn't been the most secure thing this season either. There's also some recent history between the two sides. You know, Chelsea nabbed Sanchez, Cucurella, Caicedo and Potter from the Seagulls in recent times, and while Potter's now, I don't know what that bro is doing, unemployed or something, the other 3 players are still big parts of Chelsea's side, and, you know, I think there's a bit of animosity between the two. Will Chelsea keep up the entertainment they've provided this season? I'm hoping for a good clash at Stamford Bridge. And then we move on to Liverpool versus Fulham. The Scousers host Fulham at Anfield as they look to continue their push for the top spot. Liverpool have been performing well this season and currently find themselves in 3rd, level on points with 4th placed Villa. Villa are in 4th. Anyway, we'll come back to them. Liverpool have been in some great form recently, winning 3 of their last 5 matches and drawing the other 2. And now, I say this a lot, but it is a massive change from their fortunes last season, and they're looking like a genuine title contender once again. The Merseyside outfit have scored 28 goals so far this season, which is the joint 2nd most, and have also conceded the 2nd least amount of goals this season as well, with 11. Fulham have been having a much different season though, much different fortunes. They've only scored 13 goals this season, but have largely been struggling in front of net anyway. They've also conceded 22 goals, which is double their opponents have, which is never a great result, never a great comparison to here. I'm going to say 2-0 to Liverpool. It should be a fairly easy win for Liverpool. Despite each side missing a couple of players, Liverpool do have the stronger squad and a much deeper depth as well. Fulham's win against Wolves was much needed for the Cottagers, but the only real threat came from the spot and VAR. And I can't really see Liverpool conceding a penalty unless VAR is on a madness once again. I can't see Fulham troubling Liverpool too much at all, to be honest, especially at Anfield. Should Liverpool win this match and other results go their way, they could see themselves rise to the top of the table for the first time in a long time. But that counts on what? Arsenal not winning, Man City not winning, Villa not winning. You know, there's a lot riding on it, but if results go their way, we could see a Liverpool side topping the table. Alright, and then we move on to West Ham United versus Crystal Palace. It's an East versus South London derby here, as West Ham host Crystal Palace at the London Stadium. West Ham find themselves in 9th place, sitting on a solid 20 points. The Hammers have won 2 of their last 5 matches, which is not a brilliant run of form, but performances are looking better despite that form, with them scoring 23 goals so far this season. Palace, on the other hand, are sitting in 13th, with 15 points to their name, only winning 1 of their last 5 matches, which is not a great run, not a good look. You know, the Eagles have not been as clinical in front of net either, only scoring 13 goals, but also conceding less than their opponents, so it's not really the end of the world. They kind of level themselves out with West Ham conceding more, but also scoring more. I'm going to say 2-1 to West Ham. I can see West Ham grabbing another win here. In their previous 2 matches, West Ham have had to come from behind to claim the 3 points, which, you know, to be fair, they've done successfully. I do think the visitors will grab a goal. The Hammers' defence doesn't really fill me with much confidence, to be fair, and I think Palace's attack will be able to exploit that and cause them issues, especially with Eze and Elise back in the squad. I mean, we saw how Forest hit them and scored 2 goals. I'd say we've got a better attack than Palace at the moment, but yeah, but Burnley scored against West Ham, and I think Palace have a better attack than Burnley, so yeah, I think we'll see Palace grab a goal. They've got the attacking players for it, and West Ham's defence isn't looking too good at the moment. West Ham are also without Bowen and Antonio, as they still appear to be out for the hosts, which will definitely blunt their attack. I know Antonio is out. I'm not sure if Bowen is. I think it's looking like he will be, which is unfortunate for my FPL, but good for Palace. But I still reckon that West Ham have it in them to beat Palace. But it's going to be a tough clash between the 2 sides. There's no doubt about that. But I think West Ham have it in them. They've got the dog in them to beat Palace. And then we move on to Bournemouth versus Aston Villa. The Cherries host Aston Villa at Dean Court. And this could be a big match for Villa. If results go their way, we could see Villa finish the game week at the top of the league. Now that would be a sight to behold. A win wouldn't see Bournemouth go top, unfortunately, but it would see them pull further away from the relegation zone, which is arguably more important. Unfortunately for the Cherries though, Aston Villa are in some brilliant form at the moment. The Villains have won 4 of their last 5 matches. I mean, if you think about it, the loss that Villa suffered at the hands of Nottingham Forest has kept them off the top of the league. Forest are fucking massive. Bournemouth's form hasn't been too bad either though, winning 3 of their last 5, with a very impressive win over Newcastle being the big talking point. I'm going to say 3-0 to Villa. I think it'll be a big win for Villa. Under Emery, Villa are a fine-tuned attacking force and will cause a lot of teams a lot of problems. I mean, they already have. We've seen that before. They can be stopped in their tracks by a very well-organised side, but even then, they still offer a lot of threat. It's crazy. You know, Forest kept them out, but Villa were peppering. They were peppering a goal. Bournemouth's defensive record hasn't been brilliant this season, conceding 28 goals so far, which is not great. Villa are the joint highest scoring side this season and can heavily exploit a team's defence. Bournemouth look like they're in trouble, but they can take a slight reprieve from the fact that it's looking like Watkins is going to be injured and we'll be facing a spell on the sidelines for this clash, which, you know, it's not amazing news because they've still got a wealth of attacking talent, but it's a slight glimmer of hope that they won't get absolutely dominated as much as they would if he was in the side. Villa still have a very strong attack regardless though. Even if Watkins is out, you know, they've got goal scorers. So I see Villa taking the 3 points back to Birmingham. I can't see Bournemouth offering much of a threat, to be honest. They've won their last 2 matches, have been in some good form recently, but this Villa side are different gravy, man. You know, they're not awash with injuries. You know, they're a very potent attacking team. It's not looking good for the Cherries. And finally, Manchester City versus Tottenham Hotspur. We round off a week of Premier League football with a clash that has the potential to be very entertaining. Manchester City and Spurs at the Etihad. Manchester City slipped from their perch last week and find themselves in second, just a point off the league leaders Arsenal. You know, Spurs North London rivals, that must sting. Spurs enjoyed a few weeks at the top before Chelsea effectively ended their sparkling start to the season, and then injuries started piling up as well. It's really not been looking great for Andrew's boys. Spurs currently find themselves in 5th, 4 points off the top, and are currently experiencing an awful run of form, losing 3 of their last 5 consecutively. Spurs are suffering from extensive injury problems, but City are also missing a few players, to be fair. The Citizens will be without Kevin De Bruyne, Mateo Kovacic, Mateus Nunes. But with the depth City have at their disposal, I can't really see that being a huge problem for them. I mean, they've been without De Bruyne for the whole season pretty much, and they've still been scoring goals, still been challenging Arsenal, challenging Spurs for the title, and I don't think Kovacic and Nunes really are too big of misses, to be honest. I mean, they've got the rotation, man. City are they're just an insane team. Spurs are still without Maddison, Bentancur and Van de Ven as well, and Romero, who is also going to be serving the final game of his suspension after that silly red card he picked against Chelsea. So yeah, the Spurs attacking force that was Maddison, Richarlison and Son has really just been reduced to rubble, really. I'm going to say 3-1 to City. I know that Spurs are a side that classically caused City a lot of issues, but I see the treble winners claiming all 3 points in this one. City did drop points to Liverpool, but they're a side who are in some good form at the moment. And Spurs just are currently quite weak at the moment with all their absentees. I do think the London outfit will score a goal. They still have Son and Johnson as attacking threats, And, you know, Johnson and Son have been combining quite a bit recently. I mean, one of Son's goals that was chucked off offside was an assist from Johnson. One of Son's other goals was an assist from Johnson, and Johnson has scored as well. So he's looking very good. I'm very, very happy for him. So I can see Spurs sneaking a goal, but ultimately City are just too strong of a side for this Spurs team to overcome. I can't see City dropping points for the third consecutive time this season. I think they'll, you know, turn things around with a win over Spurs. But Spurs are their bogey team, so we could see another shock win for Tottenham. I think this one, City have it in the bag. But yeah, those have been my Game Week 14 Premier League predictions. If you have any of your own, please leave them down in the comments. I do enjoy seeing what everyone else is cooking up. But yeah, I've been O2GT. I hope we see a Forest win this week. That would be the cherry on top. And yeah, have a brilliant day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.